when a mother tries to feed her child. Initially, she makes very exaggerated expressions. She points towards a parrot. See, there's a crow, there's a parrot. And initially, when the child is very young, the child cannot understand why is my mother making such weird faces. And similarly, when we are neophytes in Krishna consciousness, we can't see Krishna. We don't understand what senior devotees are talking about. We can only look at the senior devotees. We can only relate to their example. And that is why it is very, like initially when I was a neophyte devotee, like my mentors, they really played a huge role in rooting me in Krishna consciousness. And also when we are in LKG or UKG, we cannot, no one has manifested the alphabet by themselves. The teacher writes on the board. That is actually a Prabhupada analogy. The teacher writes on the board and we copy what is written on the board. So none of us learn by ourselves. So similarly, we need great devotees. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself has set such a great example for us to follow. So that's why I feel it's very important and very relevant.
Okay.
I would also like to add one more point to what you said. We all know that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has come to deliver the fallen souls. And he is doing that through Bhakti Yoga, which is the topmost yoga. So Bhakti Yoga is all about Achare, Prachar. He is teaching us Bhakti Yoga through his example. So that's why we have chosen this topic.
Okay. So very nice, Prachar, and Kritika, how you said that, like we need someone who can actually, someone who can equal. Yeah. So this is how, like how you said that, Chaitanya, we need someone whom we can always follow. So can you all please tell me any such instance with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu wherein he is actually teaching by his example? So can we go round the table, and like I would first request Apsara.
Hare Krishna. So the first instance which I would like to cite is Mahaprabhu's humility. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is very humble, and I guess this is one quality which attracts all the followers to a leader. So if a leader is humble, she or he will be able to attract the followers more easily and capture their hearts too. So I feel humility is one quality which is abundant in Mahaprabhu.
Okay, nice answer, humility. But then how we were speaking about like someone we can follow, right? So someone has to have that qualities of, for example, a leadership quality should be there in that person for me to follow that person. So how come humility is attractive? Because nowadays if you ask, we are in Kali Yuga and we know that people do not much appreciate humility. Like from my personal experience, humility is taken as, like some weakness. So how come humility, you can tell something which is, someone who can follow?
Actually, there is a pastime of Mahaprabhu wherein his humility attracted even the impersonalist people. And once it so happened that Mahaprabhu met the Mayavadi philosophers at Varanasi. So the leader among them was Prachar and Saraswati. So when Mahaprabhu came, Mahaprabhu appeared so humble. He's actually so humble that he attracted all those Mayavadi philosophers. They began requesting Mahaprabhu to give his nectar on the Vedanta Sutras. So Mahaprabhu, by his humility, he melted their hearts and he put on a dent through it and poured the nectar of Vedanta Sutras. So this way we see an example, a real pastime wherein via Mahaprabhu's humility, he attracted so many followers. He turned all those impersonalists into personalists, and all those Mayavadi philosophers were turned into personalist devotees. So I feel via this pastime we can understand how important humility is for a leader.
Okay, so any other point you have to tell?
Yeah, so the next quality I would like to speak about Mahaprabhu is his open-mindedness. Open-mindedness is very important for a leader because it helps the leader to get the views and opinions of others also. So only when a leader is open-minded, she or he can accept the criticism and then take steps for self-improvement. So there is one such pastime of Mahaprabhu's dealings with Ramachandra Puri. So to have a gist, Ramachandra Puri is the god brother of Ishwar Puri, and Ishwar Ramachandra Puri is the spiritual master of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So automatically Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has a great reverence for Ramachandra Puri. And so once it so happened that Ramachandra Puri criticized Chaitanya Mahaprabhu for his eating. And he said that a sannyasi should not take too much of sweetmeats. And because of that, so many ants had gathered at the place, and it's not good for a sannyasi to go out of the regulative principles to have much food. And then Mahaprabhu, he was so open-minded that he accepted that criticism and he even offered to change it. We know Mahaprabhu is the supreme personality of Godhead. He is so perfect. Yet, he accepted that criticism of Ramachandra Puri and then he reduced his eating to half. So we see how important it is for a leader to be open-minded and accept the criticism of others. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu accepted that criticism, which in turn paved way for a self-improvement. So I feel this way open-mindedness is another quality which attracts followers towards a leader. And then I would also like to add on another quality over here, which is constructive feedback. So a leader must always give constructive feedback to her or his followers. So we see this in the pastime of Gundicha Marjana, which is in the 12th chapter of Madhya Leela and Chaitanya Charitamrita. So Mahaprabhu was involved in cleaning the Gundicha temple with all his devotees. So by then, Mahaprabhu gave constructive feedback personally to the devotees. To the devotees who were doing a great job, Mahaprabhu went personally to them, appreciated them, and also told them to teach other devotees on how to do that. And to devotees who had something to improve, Mahaprabhu chastised them, he told them the way to correct it also. So, and also he did not hold any personal grudge with them, he just told them how to correct it. So that way I feel constructive feedback is something which is very, very important. And also herein, I guess we can give an analogy of a sandwich. Like between the two layers of compliments, we need to fit in the thing of correction. Like first a leader has to give a compliment, and then after the compliment the leader has to go with the correction, the flaw that the follower has made, and then the correction that can be made, and end it up with a compliment. This way things would be so smooth, and that's what Mahaprabhu has also done in his pastime.
Okay, so very nicely explained. So first quality that you highlighted is that, open-mindedness. So in open-mindedness you described the pastime of Ramachandra Puri and his interaction with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Ramachandra Puri's interaction. So there we see that Mahaprabhu is actually taking Ramachandra Puri's comments very seriously, isn't it? So my question is this, that sometimes people might criticize us. We have so many people, and there are people, inevitably we end up in a situation where we get criticism. So when Mahaprabhu takes Ramachandra Puri's criticism so seriously, although we know that Ramachandra Puri was himself rejected by his own guru, so if I need to come to practically apply it on us, I was just thinking that like whether someone's self-confidence would be going down when we just take everyone's criticism so seriously. Right, there should be a line wherein we should know that whether we to take everyone's criticism seriously, because some may not be even valid, right?
So herein in this example we see Chaitanya Mahaprabhu accepted criticism because Ramachandra Puri was his senior, like he was the god brother of his own spiritual master. So in that case it's good to have a criticism, and which helps us towards self-improvement. So Mahaprabhu treated Ramachandra Puri like his own spiritual master and paid full obeisances to him so whenever he met him. So in that case, listening from a senior devotee and accepting that criticism would be a good way to go.
Yeah, it's a valid thing actually. When we actually get correction from a senior devotee who is our senior or counselor or something, we can take this thing as in a very serious way, take it for our own self-improvement. So very valid point. So now, and secondly, you were speaking about this Gundicha Marjana pastime, right? The Mahaprabhu cleaning the Gundicha Marjana, Gundicha temple, sorry. So it's a very relevant pastime. So as far as I heard and read about that pastime, there are many things to learn in that pastime, isn't it? So any one of you would like to, point out few of the points from that pastime?
So as she described about the Gundicha Mahajan pastime, I could remember, I could actually point out, I could add on a point wherein how cleanliness matters. So Mahaprabhu shows that how a person who is a Vaishnava should follow Vaishnava etiquette. So here we see that Mahaprabhu is cleaning the Gundicha temple. So Vaishnava etiquette says that we should our surroundings, everything should be clean. So as we all know that cleanliness is next to godliness. So here not only cleanliness about external cleaning but also internal cleaning. We all know that we have a lot of dirt in our mind, in our heart. So the only way to clean our mind is to chant the holy name of God. So Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare.
I'd like to add another point over here. It is also seen that in Chistakam verse number 3 we see Caitanya Sada Hari. Over here we're constantly thinking of the holy names of the Lord. So when Lord Chaitanya was doing the cleaning in the Gundicha temple, he was constantly thinking of the names of Hari. Seeing Lord Chaitanya do that, all of the other followers also started doing that. So it's very important to always meditate on the names of the Lord and to always keep Krishna in our mind. So that's one of the best examples that we can learn from Lord Chaitanya, that even while cleaning, he is constantly thinking of Krishna.
And also Mataji beautifully pointed out correction without cancellation. I think that is a wonderful quality that we can, that Mahaprabhu personally demonstrated. So Mahaprabhu himself with his own clothes, he was wiping he was cleaning the place, he was wiping the altar. So he was demonstrating by his personal example. He was setting benchmarks. So Mahaprabhu, those devotees who would really sincerely clean the temple with great attention, he would really appreciate them, personally go to them and appreciate them. And those who are a little bit inattentive, he would not bear any personal grudges against them. He would just, he would make a funny remark, say, oh, you're doing this so well, you should teach this to other people also so that they can do it in the same way. So then the other person would immediately feel a little bit ashamed, and he would also start paying more attention to his work. And it is written in Chaitanya Charitamrita that the pile of dirt and sand collected by Mahaprabhu was greater than hundreds of other devotees combined. Like he was doing work, it appeared as if he was doing work with hundreds of hands. So,
yeah, very nice actually. Like two things which actually I could remember is that when you were talking about Kirtanya Sada Hari, so Mahaprabhu was cleaning and he was constantly chanting the holy names. And something which is very interesting for me when I was reading that pastime was that every single devotee, when they were doing anything, like for example they had to throw water on the floor, they were just chanting, no one is telling, throw water. They were just saying Krishna, Krishna, and they would throw. Then other devotees, if they wanted the water pot, they would just say Krishna, Krishna. So they would like Krishna, Krishna. Krishna. So it was such a wonderful, pastime that we were saying. And then you talking about how Mahaprabhu was, as a leader, he was correcting, he was giving a constructive feedback, adding to the point which Apsara said. So it was very important, which when you were talking, I was reflecting on this point, that how a leader should be, It's not like a dictator that I give this service to this devotee and I'm myself not involved. I'm just giving, you do this, you do that, but then I'm not just getting involved in that personally. So I think for a leader to attract the people whom he is working with, this is one of the quality he should be possessing. Just not, delegating it, but also getting personally involved. And how Mahaprabhu, inspired by his own example, by personally taking his cloth, how you are telling, and, doing the cleaning. So it's really important. Okay, so moving on to Akriti. You have something to add on how Mahaprabhu demonstrated this?
So another quality that I would like to mention about Mahaprabhu is his tolerance. Now we all know Mahaprabhu was a very, very tolerant person, and we can learn so much by his example. For example, when he was going to Varanasi, at that time it was heavily populated by Mayavadis. So when they saw Mahaprabhu, they said, oh, this is such an illiterate sannyasi, and he doesn't know anything. If it was a normal situation, a person would have been very offended. This person would have been angry and upset. But this did not happen with Mahaprabhu. He was very calm and collected. He did not get angry, and he simply smiled. He simply smiled and ignored their accusations. So by this example, we learn that just by being tolerant, so many problems can be solved. So this is one very beautiful example. And another very important quality that I wanted to mention about Mahaprabhu was his respect. His respect for his guru, his respect for his devotees, respect for everybody around him. So I'll give an example. Mahaprabhu was initiated by Ishwara Puri Swami, and then when he was initiated, he called his guru to his house, offered prasad, fell at his feet, and was listening to the glories of Krishna from his guru. So this is such an important example because he is treating his guru with uttermost respect. Like how Mataji had mentioned about Ramachandra Puri. Ramachandra Puri was a god brother of his guru, but he gave Ramachandra Puri such respect even though he had offended his own guru. But he was respected as if he was Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's own guru. And another very beautiful pastime was of Keshav Kashmiri. So what happened is Keshav Kashmiri was a very proud scholar. He was very proud. So one day when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu met him, he asked Keshav Kashmiri to glorify Ganga. On the spot, Keshav Kashmiri gave 100 original verses to glorify Ganga. And then at that time, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, okay, now you point out the faults in what you have said. Keshav Kashmiri was a very proud scholar. So he said, there's no fault in what I said. So then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu started pointing out all the faults in his glorifications. But then the thing to remember here is, even though he defeated Keshav Kashmiri, even though he pointed out the faults, he was never disrespectful. With uttermost respect, he had pointed out the faults. And then even Keshav Kashmiri never felt insulted in this manner.
So very nice point. First you spoke about the tolerance, and then respect and honor which Mahaprabhu exhibits this quality. In fact, this Keshav Kashmiri pastime, it comes to my mind how he is such a nice listener, isn't it? Just listening to whatever Keshav Kashmiri is speaking on. So anyone would like to add any point on this?
Yes, Mataji. Mahaprabhu was a wonderful listener. I'm getting reminded of this pastime also with Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. And when Mahaprabhu met Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, he was a very young sannyasi and he was very good looking. So Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya was like, you need to have a very strong foundation in Vedanta to really, practice your vows. So he took class for him for 7 days continuously in Vedanta Sutra. I mean, here is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Vedeshu durlabham adurlabham atma bhaktau. So, and here is Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, and he was taking class for him for 7 days. And Mahaprabhu, he didn't speak at all. He was just listening for 7 days continuously. And then later, after Mahaprabhu started speaking on the Vedanta Sutra, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya was amazed, and then he submitted to Mahaprabhu. So,
yes, it's that way. This is such a beautiful quality of Mahaprabhu, how he is exhibiting this quality of properly listening. If you see that if we have to, if you have to take some personal lesson, we should be a good listener, what we can take it from here. Because most of us like to talk, but how many of us like to listen to what others are speaking, and that too attentive hearing. Most of us are lacking behind this particular quality of attentive hearing. We hardly remember, right, what we have already spoken on. Yeah. So, yes, anything more you wanted to add?
So another very beautiful example is how when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had taken sannyas, he went to his mother, and it shows how he is so respectful and obedient towards his mother. So he went to his mother and was like, this material body is yours, please grant me permission. So this is such a beautiful example of how he is always so respectful, so obedient towards his superiors and other devotees. And another quality that I would like to mention about Chaitanya Mahaprabhu that is very important is that he's very strict about the regulative principles. So he's very particular that all the regulative principles need to be followed. Now there's a very beautiful pastime. Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda were going to the house of Advaita Goswami. So on the way, they were greeted by a sannyasi who invited them to their house. Now, Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda, as usual, they always love, associate with other devotees. So they went to this sannyasi's house. The sannyasi greeted them. He offered them fruit prasad. So Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda had the prasad. And then suddenly, this sannyasi brought out wine. So they were very shocked and they're like, wine, you drink wine. And then, the sannyasi he gave some very nonsensical excuse and he said, yeah, wine is good for health. But then Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda were so shocked, they immediately jumped and they ran out of the house and with their clothes on, they jumped into Ganga. And even after that, they were feeling very guilty that, we had taken prasad from a false sadhu's house. So this is a very beautiful example of how they're teaching us that not only should we follow the regulative principles, but we should also only associate with devotees who are following the regulative principles. And then another example was of Junior Haridasa. So what happened is Haridasa was a renounced devotee, but despite this, he actually was lusting after a woman. So Lord Chaitanya immediately rejected him. And even after, a lot of pleading, Lord Chaitanya was very strict. He's like, no, and then he rejected Haridasa. And then a year later, Haridasa committed suicide. And then we see later on how his spirit comes back to ask for forgiveness. But then this is such a beautiful example about how we should be very strict with regulative principles. We should not compromise on this.
Yes, I echo with you a lot because following regulative principles is really important. We know that we all have, many of us have taken vows from our Guru that we will be standing on our regulative principles. And here we see that how Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is non-compromising on following the regulative principles. Right, so very nice, Akriti. So I would hand over to Pratyusha. Would you like to add on how Mahaprabhu is adding on to these qualities?
Yes, I would like to talk about one of his qualities. How Mahaprabhu follows his own principles without being a hypocrite. So I remember a pastime wherein there is a conversation between King Prataprudra and Mahaprabhu. So Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, one day he comes to Mahaprabhu and says that there's a king called Prataprudra and he wants to meet you. He is very eager to meet you. So Mahaprabhu immediately rejects it. He says that he covers his ears and he's like, no, why do you want such an undesirable thing for me? I can't meet him. And then he explains that why doesn't he want to meet him. So in this we can see how he explains how he stands by his own principle. So as we all know, Mahaprabhu is sannyasi. So he says a sannyasi shouldn't be associating with any of the materialistic persons who is engaged into sense gratification. So he says this because engaging with a materialistic people who is into sense gratification is equally poisonous and dangerous as a snake. Because our mind is so fickle, so chanchal that it can run behind anything and it will give way to all the enemies of mind like lust, anger, greed, illusion and all of that. So we should be very careful with our dealings of our mind, and we should be very careful with whom we are associating. Whether it's a materialistic person or a devotee who is not following a four regulative principle. So the only way to control our mind is to chant the holy name of Lord and to engage at the lotus feet of our Lord.
Yeah, very nice point that how you said that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is actually showing by his example. Yeah, showing by his example that how he was such a self-controlled person, isn't it? So that's a quality of a leader. He never loses on his own values. He knows that where his values are and he never compromises on his values. That shows. Something else you want to add on?
I would also list out a point where acknowledgement and he doesn't discriminate. How a leader should acknowledgement doesn't discriminate regardless of caste and racism. So here once again I remember a pastime wherein there is a conversation between Ramananda Rai Prabhu and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So when they both meet each other, during the South India Yatra, when Ramananda Rai Prabhu take bath in Godavari river, and when he sees Chaitanya Mahaprabhu chanting at a distance, he sees he is as brilliant as 100 suns. So he approaches him and he sees he is a great sannyasi. He pays obeisances, and seeing Ramananda Rai Prabhu, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he makes him rise up and he asks him, "Are you Ramananda Rai?" And Ramananda Rai Prabhu with great humility says, "I am a Shudra, I am the lowest of the society." So here this shows, not only that, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu even embraces him. So this shows that the Vaishnava etiquette, like whenever we meet a Vaishnava, we should not, Vaishnava generally, they derive joy in praising each other and greeting each other. So it's very important that, you be very humble and meek to each other, and that's how you greet Vaishnava. And also from this, I could point out one thing is, nowadays, I don't think so we talk much about caste and all of that, but generally those time people used to, like if you are from this caste, you shouldn't, associate with us. So generally in Vedas it's written that a sannyasi shouldn't be associating with Shudras, but Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, through his behavior, he's showing us a Shudra who is a devotee of God, who is a pure devotee of God. We should not consider a Shudra on his caste. We should see him if he is a pure devotee of God or not.
Very important point what you spoke about, like especially in the current times. Yes, caste and creed is not so much prevalent now. At least there is so much of change in the mind it's happening. But that's something which is still going on in a very subtle way. Sectarism, isn't it? Right?
Yes.
So leaders should not actually, not only leader, as someone who is a devotee, it should not discriminate someone on the basis of all those things like a caste, creed, from which area we belong to. Because sometimes what happens when we gather together in a public program or wherever you meet someone in office or somewhere, like at least I work and I know few of you are there as in school as well as in a hospital, and you in a company, right? You're working in a company. So what happens when we gather around, what happens, people, oh, I'm from Andhra, I'm from this place, I'm from that place, and they would like make groups on that, right? And that's kinds of reflect on our work culture. It starts getting approached into that, right? So I think that's something which we can learn from this, that how not to segregate someone on the basis of anything social order or anything else. So anyone wants to add any point to this? You have anything?
I can give a few other examples of how Mahaprabhu absolutely didn't discriminate, whether it's caste, religion, whether the person is rich or poor. Like the first example I would give is Haridas Thakur. Haridas Thakur was born from a Muslim background, but he took a vow to chant 3 lakh names of the Lord per day. That is a huge amount. And he was a very, very pure devotee of the Lord. And the Lord loved him so much that when Haridas Thakur left his body, he passed away in the Chaitanya Mahaprabhu held him in his lap. And then after he passed away, he held his body and did ecstatic kirtan and then went to the ocean. And finally, he personally begged alms for him and made a grand fest for him that way. So Mahaprabhu really, really loved his devotees. And second is with Vasudev Vipra. He was afflicted with leprosy. Leprosy even now is a social stigma. So anyone who has leprosy, since it's contagious, many people don't go near them. So Vasudev Vipra, though he was affected with leprosy, he was a very compassionate person to all living entities. When his wound was infected, when there were worms in his wounds, the worms would somehow fall down. But he would again pick them up and put it back in his wounds. He was that compassionate because that was the worm's mode of sustenance. And so one day he wanted to really see Mahaprabhu, and he was feeling so much of separation from him, so he went to see him. But at that point of time, Mahaprabhu had left that place. So he couldn't take separation from Mahaprabhu and he immediately fainted. And then Mahaprabhu, he came to know of that and he came back to that place and he embraced Vasudeva Vipra. To anyone like Mahaprabhu, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, embraced his devotee, and immediately Vasudeva Vipra was cured of leprosy.
And another thing I would like to mention is the pastime of the Brahman from Sri Ranganatha temple and from Mahaprabhu's South India tour. So when Mahaprabhu was on his South India tour, there was this Brahmana. He was illiterate, but he would love to sit in front of the Bhagavad Gita daily, try to read it, and other people would make fun of him. Oh, you don't even know how to read and write. How come you're just sitting in front of the Bhagavad Gita? But Mahaprabhu knew, he recognized the pure devotee, and he immediately went, and to prove the greatness of that devotee to everyone else, he asked, why are you reading the Bhagavad Gita? The devotee told that my Guru Maharaj told me, so I'm reading. And you don't understand, but you're still reading it. And the devotee told, I don't understand any of it, but I just saw the cover picture of Bhagavad Gita. And in that picture, I saw that Krishna, who is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, has accepted a position of a charioteer to his pure devotee. So in charioteer, like when war is going on, you can't really tell and communicate anything. So if the person who's fighting the war wants to direct his charioteer to a particular place, he has to kick the charioteer. Like left means kick the person with his left foot, right means kick the person with his right foot. So that is how Arjuna was kicking Krishna here and there. And just to serve as pure devotee, the Lord took that position. And after Mahaprabhu heard that, he recognized that, oh, this is such a really pure devotee of the Lord.
Very wonderful. In fact, the pastime which you spoke about, the Brahmana who was, reading it, upside down. So though other people who were there around him, they were criticizing him, right? But then Mahaprabhu understood that how he is having pure devotion, and then he interacted. So it's a wonderful quality for us to learn that we don't go with the crowd always. Sometimes we need to think logically also. Sometimes what happens, there is one devotee and many people, they start criticizing at the same time. But the actual leader, what he understands is that he sees the little spark in that person, a little good quality in that person, and he fans that particular spark so that it becomes a fire, right? So it's a very important quality of a leader, to see good in everyone, not to criticize anyone, right? It's very beautiful quality. Anything else you wanted to add, Kritika? Is it? Right, okay, so Pratyusha, you want to...
apart from this, I would also like to speak about how Mahaprabhu really cared about his devotees, and he was very protective towards his devotees. Like we see in the Srivas Thakur pastime, where Srivas Thakur heard a rumor that anyone who chants the name of the Lord will be persecuted, and immediately he goes back, he prays to his deities. And then Mahaprabhu, he immediately turns up at his doorstep in the mood of Narsinghadev, and that was really beautiful. So the Lord knows the heart of his pure devotee. And also second pastime is the Chant Khazi pastime, where the Lord does the first non-cooperation movement. And it is said that at that point there's a certain description that says that Lord Shiva at the time of Mahapralaya, he would be so angry. So that is nothing compared to how Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu felt then, because Chant Khazi came, he broke the mridanga, he threatened his pure devotees, he told that anyone who chants the name of the Lord, his property will be confiscated, and he will also be converted to Islam. So all the devotees got scared, and Mahaprabhu immediately, to quell the fears of his devotees and to give them reassurance, he had this pastime. And Chant Khazi, he was so scared that he submitted to the Lord. And another pastime I would also like to add is also the pastime of Jagai and Madai, where when Lord Nityananda was really hurt, Mahaprabhu, his eyes were red like coals, and he immediately manifested this Sudarshan Chakra, and it was looming ominously over Jagai and Madai, and they were so scared. So anyone who threatens his pure devotees, the Lord immediately cannot tolerate it.
Okay, so the question that arises in my mind, like, I think Akriti spoke about tolerance, isn't it? And now we are seeing that how Mahaprabhu is going to a certain extent very so protective about his devotees. So isn't this two characteristics so, contradictory?
The Lord is very tolerant when it comes to him, but he's not tolerant when it comes to with respect to offenses towards his devotees. So this we can learn from Mahaprabhu in one way, is that we can engage many many of our emotions except envy in the service of the Lord. And similarly, when a pure devotee is being threatened, we have to defend them, following in the footsteps of Mahaprabhu. So this is one thing I could.
Yeah, very nice actually. This is how we learn. Offenses towards us is tolerable, but not offenses towards a devotee. We should never tolerate when someone is offending the devotees wherever possible. If it is possible from our end, that's what I learned from my seniors. If it is possible from our end, actually to defend and give some value wherein we are able to not lead to this offending of the devotees, we can speak on there. Otherwise, we can just simply leave from that place. We should never hear to some offenders who are offending the devotees, or never tolerate if someone is actually offending the devotees. So this is something wonderful qualities actually we were all discussing on, seeing the time actually. So we can go ahead for some more time. We can. We just want to add on one more question. We can go. Okay. So one question. Okay. So how important it is for a devotee to follow the teachings of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu? Like when we talk about leading by example, Mahaprabhu has given us. He is showing by his characteristics. But how important is for us to actually meditate on it, and how much we should apply these qualities? Why is it so relevant? Why is it so important?
Yeah, it's very important for us to learn from Mahaprabhu's example, because often we hear philosophies, we hear words, but then sometimes they come from one ear and they come out from the other. But when we see the example of a devotee, when we are seeing them always remember the holy names of the Lord, do service for the Lord and his devotees, we're able to learn more. Because by example, we are very visual people. So by example, we're able to see that yes, it is attainable, it is possible. Even I can, perform service towards the Lord. So that's why leading by example is very important. Not only do we see other devotees do it, we get inspired also when we see other devotees perform such wonderful service.
And I would also like to add another thing, like with respect to Mahaprabhu, like he's always a very his dealings and his association with his devotees is very sweet. His pastimes are very sweet. The way he deals with his associates and his devotees is very sweet. So similarly, when we Nava Gauravaram, Nama Pushpasaram, so he's always ecstatic. He's always dancing and when we see senior devotees, we see them also like very similar. They are always joyful people. They are joking around. And Krishna, we can relate it to Bhagavad Gita when Krishna says, Raja Vidya Raja Guhyam Pavitram Idam Uttamam.
Tell me, you are itself not happy. How are you distributing this book to me, and how would I be happy while reading to this book? Right? So this is why, like preaching by example, preaching by action is really important, and Mahaprabhu exhibited this very perfectly through his pastimes. Actually, Mahaprabhu is an ocean of qualities. For us to speak on all those qualities in a limited time frame is not possible, and definitely we won't be able to tell, because Anantasesha itself is continuously glorifying Mahaprabhu with thousands of foods. Right, so from that we try to tell something from our limited capacity. Thank you so much, Chennai management, to actually giving IYS this opportunity. We hope we could serve everyone. And if we have done any mistake in our presentation, please kindly forgive us. We are learning, and thank you so much.
Hare Krishna, Hare Thank you very much. So, can anyone guess how many qualities did they speak today? Can anyone say how many qualities did they speak today? எவ்வளவு குணங்களை பத்தி இன்னைக்கு பேசினாங்க அவங்க? தெரியாது. Okay. Any one quality would like to say? Huh? Open-minded. What is the pastime for open-minded? Come again? Merciful. You are saying one quality. Okay, thank you. I'll come back to you. Open-minded, you don't know. You only get half mark. Merciful, what's the pastime, Prabhu? Deepankar, what is the pastime she mentioned about open-minded? You are busy, so you are being merciful to the others by live telecast. Haribol, thank you. Who's saying that? Leadership. Which quality of leadership she spoke about? Come again? Cleaning of the temple. Okay, what is the lesson we learned? Yeah, go around and share the mic.
Hare Krishna. We should not delegate the work. We should also try to do the work.
Very good. Thank you so much. Yes. Any other quality?
Accepting criticism.
Accepting?
Criticism.
Okay. Is it criticism or something more they say?
Tolerance.
Did you say accepting? Constructive criticism. Constructive feedback. The word is- Thank you so much. Okay. Give me the past time what they said. Positive feedback. Who gave what feedback?
For about a senior from his guru. He's up for
Relax, no problem.
sweet
Yeah, sweet.
sweets, eating about sweets.
Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you for the participation. Anybody else? Any other quality? Meenakshi Mataji, what's the quality you heard about? That's the same quality.
Ramachandrapuri's pastime. Ramachandrapuri, Ishwarapuri's God
Anything
brother.
else did you hear? Any other pastime did you hear from them?
Already they have told Prabhuji.
You didn't hear.
Already they have told.
Okay. Anybody else? What is the pastime?
So, they told about the humility of Mahaprabhu towards his guru and also the disciples.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Anybody
Hare
else?
Krishna.
Yeah.
Four regulative principles we should follow. The wine example of the Brahman.
Okay. So any example they gave for four regulative principles? What is the pastime?
Yeah, he went to a place for Prachar and they provided wine and Mahaprabhu is not tolerant for that.
Okay. Well, one more thing they said for the same example, right? You gave one more example. Yes.
I couldn't.
Anybody else? Anybody else? Nitya Kishori, what did you hear from them?
Junior Haridas Thakur pastime also they share.
Thank you very much. Yeah. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Yeah, you want to say something? Yourself, the one who is holding the mic. Yourself, man. Yourself. You want to say something? No, brother. You should say. Okay, so in a period of 45 minutes, how many qualities, how many leelas they were able to bring about in such a short way? They got the essence, but in 45 minutes to 1 hour, they were able to give so many qualities, transcendental qualities of Mahaprabhu and a related pastime. Imagine the youths of about 20 years old are able to get absorbed in Chaitanya Leela is most wonderful. Let's give a big round of applause to these wonderful devotees. It is Akriti, Apsara, Kritika and Pratyusha led by Deepa Priya Mataji. Yeah, thank you very much. I think all glories to your leaders who are guiding. It's wonderful. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Hare.
So we want you to stay back. Hopefully.